My name is Wendy. Standing on the stage of the National Technology Summit, the thunderous applause fills my ears. I'm holding the Innovation Impact Award, a symbol of my long-fought victory. But as I look out at the audience, my mind drifts back to the series of events that led me here. It all started when I was unceremoniously fired from a company where I had dedicated 17 years of my life. I grew up in a small town where my parents, both teachers, instilled in me a love for learning and a strong work ethic. My father was a patient man, always encouraging me to think outside the box, while my mother was strict but fair, teaching me the importance of perseverance. I joined the company when it was a fledgling startup operating from a converted warehouse. The founder, Leo, recognized my potential right away. "You think differently," he said. "That's exactly what we need." Under his leadership, I thrived. I built infrastructure systems that mimicked natural biological patterns, systems that breathe, rest, and regenerate. These systems saved the company millions in energy costs and hardware replacements. But everything changed when Leo sold the company 3 years ago. The new ownership brought in Mark as the technology director. Mark had impressive credentials, but his thinking was traditional. From the day he arrived, he questioned my methods. In meetings, he would argue, servers don't need rest periods. That's outdated thinking. I would patiently explain, it's not about what servers need. It's about system longevity and energy efficiency. But he would dismiss me with a wave of his hand, saying, "We need reliability, not your pet theories." 6 months ago, Sarah replaced our previous CEO. Young, ambitious, and eager to make her mark, she aligned herself with Mark immediately. They shared a vision of aggressive growth, a cutting-edge appearance, and modern methodologies. My practical, sustainable approach didn't fit their glossy presentation slides. I tried to adapt. I created reports showing the long-term benefits of my system, demonstrated how our infrastructure outperformed competitors, and even attempted to modernize certain aspects to appease them. But nothing worked. 2 weeks before my termination, I overheard Mark and Sarah in the break room. "She's resistance we don't need," Mark said. "Her systems are black boxes only she understands. Can we replace her?" Sarah asked. "I've been documenting everything. We can transition within a month." I walked away quietly, my heart pounding. I knew then what was coming, but I didn't intervene. I didn't sabotage. I simply waited. Then came the fateful day. The meeting room was stiflingly warm. Sarah slid the termination papers across the glass tabletop without even looking up from her tablet. Her manicured nails tapped impatiently against the screen. "Your director has persuaded me you're no longer essential. We're restructuring," she said in a clipped, efficient voice. My stomach clenched. 17 years of hard work, reduced to a 60-minute exit window. Mark leaned against the wall, arms crossed over his chest. The slight upturn at the corner of his mouth told me everything. He'd been gunning for me since he arrived. I kept my voice steady and asked, "Who's handling the adaptive cycling protocol?" Mark stepped forward. "We're implementing always-on architecture. Your little cycling system was inefficient. Modern systems don't need rest periods," he said with crushing arrogance. I nodded, knowing exactly what would happen. I had designed the server infrastructure using biomimetic principles, systems that required periods of reduced load, just like human muscles need recovery. It wasn't a defect, it was a deliberate design. Our servers used 40% less energy and had 70% fewer failures than the industry standard. I stood up, smoothing down my skirt. "Then I wish you luck," I said. Sarah replied, "Security will meet you at your desk," already turning her attention back to her tablet. As I walked out, Mark muttered, "Should have stayed in your lane, Wendy." I cleared my desk methodically. I took my plants, my coffee mug, and the photos of my daughter. I deleted nothing from my computer, changed no passwords, and altered no settings. I walked out head, high as my co-workers averted their eyes. At home, I kicked off my heels and opened a bottle of wine. The cycling protocol should have initiated at midnight, but they'd overridden it. At 3:17 a.m. My phone lit up. 6 missed calls, 12 text messages, all increasingly desperate. Systems were crashing, customer data was inaccessible, and everything was overheating. By 4:30 a.m., Mark called. "What did you do?"
he hissed.
"Absolutely nothing. That's the problem. Fix this now or we'll sue you into oblivion," he threatened. I took a slow sip of wine and replied, "For what?" "Designing systems that worked perfectly until you broke them. Those servers were specifically calibrated for load cycling. Run them continuously at full capacity and they'll burn themselves out. That's thermodynamics. Check the maintenance logs. Everything was documented. You just never bothered to read them." 3 more hours passed, and Sarah called. Her voice was tense with barely controlled panic. "Name your price." "We need you here now," she said. I calmly replied, "I want 30% of what this outage costs you paid as a consulting fee." She sputtered, "That's extortion." I retorted, "That's the market rate for emergency rescue from catastrophic failure. Ask any disaster recovery specialist." She paused and then said, "Fine. Get here now." I took my time arriving at the server room. It was chaos. Technicians were frantically working while executives hovered. The hardware was literally smoking from being pushed beyond capacity. I addressed the room. "The system needs 12 hours of complete shutdown to cool and reset. There's no shortcut." Sarah groaned. "That's millions in lost business."
I replied, "Yes.
And completely avoidable if you'd listened." Mark stepped forward. "This is ridiculous."
We can force a reset," he said.
I cut in, "But you'll permanently damage half your hardware. Please go ahead if you think you know better." The room fell silent. I repeated, 12 hours. "And I'll need complete autonomy to restore the systems properly." Sarah nodded reluctantly. "Do it." For the next 12 hours, I sat alone in the darkened server room, watching the temperature gauges slowly drop. I documented everything: the override commands Mark had implemented, the warnings he'd ignored, and the alerts that had been dismissed. When it was time to restart the systems, I did so gradually, implementing the proper cycling protocols. As the servers came back online, relief spread throughout the company. By morning, everything was functioning normally. I was escorted to Sarah's office, where Mark sat tight, lipped and silent. I reported, "The systems are stable. But there's something you should know." Just as I was about to reveal what I discovered, a notification pinged on Sarah's computer. Her face drained of color as she read it. "We have another problem," she whispered. Customer complaints were flooding in, not just about the outage, but about corrupted data. Some transactions from the past week were showing errors, others were missing entirely. Sarah accused me. This wasn't part of the server overheating. I sat down my coffee and explained, "This is the cascade effect I warned about in my quarterly report last spring. When you force continuous processing without proper cycling, data integrity checkpoints get skipped." Mark slammed his hand on the desk. "That's convenient, blaming your design flaws on us." I countered, "My design accounted for human error, including the error of ignoring design specifications." The tension in the room was thick. Outside Sarah's glass office, employees hurried past, stealing glances. News of the catastrophe had spread through the company like wildfire. Sarah asked, "How long to fix it?" I replied, "The data corruption will take a minimum of 3 days. Some of it may be unrecoverable." Mark stood up. "Unacceptable. I'll bring in an external team." I interrupted, "Who won't understand the architecture? They'll take twice as long and recover half as much." Just then, Sarah's phone rang. It was our largest client, Mr. Thompson. His voice was ice cold. "We've lost access to our entire inventory management system. Our warehouses are at a standstill. That's millions in shipping delays." "What exactly is happening, Sarah?" Sarah looked at me pleadingly. I wrote a note. "I can fix their system first." "For hours." Sarah said, "Mr. Thompson, I understand your frustration. We experienced a system-wide failure due to an implementation error. We have our lead architect working on priority restoration. Your systems will be functional within 4 hours." "Mr. Thompson replied, 4 hours is still 4 hours too many. We have contractual guarantees of 99.9% uptime. Sarah said, I understand. We'll discuss appropriate compensation once systems are restored. After she hung up, Sarah's professional facade crumbled. Fix Mr. Thompson systems first, then we'll discuss your consulting fee, she said.
I smiled politely.
My fee just increased to 40%. Mark exploded. That's absurd. I explained, data recovery is more complex than system restoration. Different skill set, higher premium. I gathered my things and said, I need access to my old workstation and credentials. Sarah told Mark, give her whatever she needs. Working through Mr. Thompson's data issues took exactly the 4 hours I'd promised. Their systems came online first while the rest of the company remained in various states of disarray. By that evening, I'd stabilized about 30% of the affected systems. As midnight approached, I sat alone in the server room, surrounded by the hum of equipment. The door opened and Mark slipped in. I know what you're doing, he said quietly. Saving your career? I didn't look up from my screen. He accused me, playing the hero after sabotaging us. I swiveled my chair to face him. That's a serious accusation. You knew the cycling system would fail if we changed it. I documented that fact in 12 different reports. Reports you were paid to read, Mark. That was literally your job. He stepped closer. I've been going through the logs. There's an authentication signature showing you accessed the system remotely last night. My heart stuttered, but I kept my expression neutral. That's my automated monitoring alert. It pings the system daily to check status. Again, documented in the system's specifications. He said, convenient. I corrected, thorough. Unlike your understanding of the infrastructure. He leaned down, his voice low. When this is over, you're done in this industry. I have connections you can't imagine. I retorted, threatening the person saving your company. Bold strategy. The next morning, I presented a recovery timeline to Sarah. 5 days to full restoration with critical systems prioritized. She looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes. The board is meeting this afternoon.
They want answers, she said.
I replied, I'm sure Mark has plenty of those. Her eyes narrowed. This was your system. You bear responsibility, too. I countered. My system worked perfectly for 7 years. It failed the moment someone decided they knew better than its architect. Later that day, I was summoned to the boardroom. 12 executives sat around the table, with Sarah and Mark at one end. I was directed to a seat at the opposite end, physically positioned as the adversary. The board chairman, Mr. Harris, spoke first. Miss Wendy, we understand you designed the infrastructure that failed. I replied, I designed an infrastructure that operated flawlessly for 7 years with 0 unplanned downtime. It failed when Director Mark overrode the core operating principles despite documented warnings. Mark interjected, the cycling protocol was outdated technology. Every major competitor uses always on architecture. I countered, every major competitor has triple our hardware replacement costs and double our energy consumption. Mr. Harris raised his hand. The question before us is simple. How do we prevent this from happening again? I said, you restore the original cycling protocols. Mark argued, or we modernize properly with redundant always-on systems. A board member leaned forward. What would that cost? Mark said confidently, around $7 million for hardware upgrades, plus increased operating costs of roughly $2 million annually. I said, and to restore my system, 0 additional cost. The hardware is designed for it. The room fell silent as they processed this. Mr. Harris cleared his throat. Miss Wendy, would you step outside while we discuss? In the hallway, I paced, running calculations in my head. The outage had already cost them at least $10 million in lost business and client compensation. My 40% fee would be significant. After 20 minutes, I was called back in. Mr. Harris announced, we've made a decision. We'll be restoring your cycling protocol for now, but transitioning to a hybrid system over the next 6 months. We'd like to offer you a 3 month contract to oversee the transition. I hadn't expected that. My consulting rate is triple your previous salary plus the fee already agreed upon for the emergency response, I said.
Mr.
Harris slid a contract across the table. We value expertise, Miss Wendy, even if some failed to recognize it. Mark's face was a storm cloud.
Sarah looked resigned.
I said, I'll need to review the terms, and took the contract. Over the next 3 days, I worked around the clock. Systems came back online one by one. Data was recovered where possible. The company limped back to operation. On the 4th day, I found Mark in my old office, going through my archived files. Looking for something? I asked from the doorway. He jumped slightly. Research for the transition plan, he said. I replied, those files are outside the scope of your access permissions. He said, I'm the technology director. Nothing is outside my scope. I stepped closer. You know what I think, Mark? I think you're desperate to find evidence that I sabotaged the system. Because if you don't, everyone will know this disaster lands squarely on your shoulders. His eyes narrowed. The board may be temporarily impressed by your recovery efforts, but they see the bigger picture. Your system was a house of cards. I retorted, my system was brilliant, and you know it. That's what really bothers you. That a woman created something you couldn't understand, much less improve upon. You're living in a fantasy world. He gathered his tablet. Enjoy your temporary victory. This company will be implementing my vision, not yours. As he brushed past me, I caught his arm. Before this is over, everyone will know exactly who you are. That night, as I reviewed the contract offered by the board, I noticed something peculiar. A clause regarding intellectual property that hadn't been in my original employment agreement. I called my attorney, Lisa. They're trying to claim ownership of your biomimetic computing methodology, she confirmed after reviewing the document. Not just the implementation you created for them, but the entire concept. That's why they want you back. They're afraid you'll take it elsewhere. I thought about Mark's smug face, Sarah's cold dismissal after 17 years of service, and the board's sudden interest in my expertise now that they needed it. I decided to offer. The next morning, I returned to the office with my revised contract and a flash drive containing something I discovered during the recovery process. Something that would change everything. As I waited in the lobby for my meeting with Mr. Harris, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Check your email now. We need to talk before you meet the board. I opened my email to find a message from Sarah's personal account. The subject line read, "What Mark didn't tell you." The attachment was a series of emails between Mark and a Mr. Davis at a competing company. My heart raced as I began to read. For 6 months, Mark had been feeding information to Mr. Davis, the CTO of our largest competitor. Not just company gossip, but detailed infrastructure vulnerabilities, client dissatisfaction metrics, and strategic roadmaps. The most damning email was sent just 2 days before my termination. Once Wendy is removed, we proceed with Phase 2. The system will fail within 72 hours of disabling her cycling protocol. When clients panic, your team can offer emergency migration services. Split the commissions 70/30, as discussed. My hands trembled as I scrolled through more messages. This wasn't just corporate sabotage. It was the calculated destruction of something I'd spent nearly 2 decades building. I quickly forwarded the emails to my personal account and my attorney. Then I texted Sarah. Meeting in 15 minutes, your office. When I arrived, Sarah was pacing. Her usual confidence was replaced with jittery anxiety. I only found those emails this morning, she said immediately. I was reviewing Mark's communications after the board raised questions about his implementation decision, and I was blindsided. I had no idea he was working with Mr. Davis. I studied her face for signs of deception. You fired me on his recommendation because he showed me reports indicating your system was inefficient. Reports that apparently were manipulated, she said, slumping into her chair. The board is going to crucify me. I said, the board doesn't know yet.
Just me.
I wanted to speak with you first. I consider my options. The flash drive in my pocket contained not just Mark's treachery, but also proof that my biomimetic computing methodology had applications far beyond what the company had implemented. During the recovery, I discovered logs showing how my adaptive systems had automatically prevented 3 major cyber attacks last year alone. A feature I'd built in, but never documented. I said calmly, "Here's what's going to happen. We're going to meet with the board together. You'll present what you found about Mark, and I'll present my contract revisions." Sarah whispered, "They'll fire me." I replied, "Possibly. That depends on how you handle the next hour." The boardroom was tense when we arrived. Mr. Harris looked surprised to see Sarah accompanying me. I began, "Miss Sarah has information critical to the company's security." Sarah connected her laptop to the projector with shaking hands. As the emails appeared on screen, gasps and mutters filled the room. Mr. Harris's face darkened with every slide. "Where is Mark now?" he demanded. Sarah replied, "Security is escorting him from the building. I've also initiated emergency protocols."